I will be more than glad to make available to the committee. It shows that what we have done is consistent with the law and also consistent with the important responsibilities that the Inspector General has.
But we want to make sure the Inspector General can do his job even in the Justice Department.
Senator Shelby, why don't we then continue this with the Inspector General? And
we will.
Given the fact that there's an 11:30 vote,
okay,
we want to be sure members have a chance
Thank you for your time.
Answer their questions. No, and not to stifle. This is really crucial, and we acknowledge the essential nature of this conversation, and we hope to be able to squeeze in the Inspector General. Senator Collins.
Thank you. Mr. Attorney General, I mentioned in my opening remarks that the Department of Justice, along with the Department of Homeland Security, plays a critical role in reviewing claims for asylum. I believe that this system is seriously broken. It has allowed individuals to remain in this country under grants of asylum who never should have been allowed to remain here, and yet it takes too long to adjudicate the legitimate cases of asylum seekers, thus delaying their ability to work and support their families and imposing a huge burden on communities' general assistance funds while these asylum seekers are waiting for their cases to be adjudicated. I'd like to give you an example of both and then get your response and find out what you're doing with the Department of Homeland Security to improve the system. Later this month, as we who live in New England are particularly aware, it will be 1 year since the terrorist attacks at the Boston Marathon. The circumstances under which the perpetrators of the Boston Marathon bombing came to be in the United States underscores the need for reform of our asylum process. The younger of the two Tsarnaev brothers came to the U.S. on a tourist visa in 2002 and was granted asylum on his father's petition shortly thereafter. Now, asylum is supposed to be available only to those who can show a credible fear of persecution in their home country. Yet the elder Tsarnaev came to the United States, leaving behind his wife and 3 other children in the country that he claimed to fear. So it's difficult for me to understand how he possibly could have met the burden of proving a credible fear of persecution by the country in which he left his wife and remaining children. Even more troubling are the questions surrounding the grant of asylum to Ibrahim Todashev. That is the Chechen immigrant who was killed while being questioned by the FBI agents and local law enforcement regarding his association with the Tsarnaevs and also a triple homicide. It turns out that he came to the U.S. in 2008 on a J-1 visa to participate in an exchange program that was sponsored by an entity in my state, the Council on International Education Exchange, and that is a J-1 visa sponsor organization. Now, from the start, it appears that Todashev had no intention of complying with the J-1 visa rules, and indeed, shortly after he arrived, the council withdrew their sponsorship of him because he failed to provide the required documentation with respect to employment. That very day, the council in Maine instructed him to make immediate plans to leave the country, recorded the information on the federal database that is used, and yet, despite this agency doing everything correct, and despite the fact that Mr. Todashev was out of compliance with the requirements of his visa, he was later granted asylum and even a green card. This shocked the entity in Maine that reported him from being out of compliance with the visa years ago. I find this very troubling. How is it that a young man from Chechnya comes to the United States to participate in a cultural exchange program, immediately violates the conditions of his visa, is told to leave the country, and then is granted asylum? That to me shows there's a real problem with sharing of information and with the system. Now on the other side, we have the problem of legitimate asylum seekers, and they have been forced to rely on local governments for the money that they need to live on. In Maine, for example, the cities of Portland and Lewiston alone have contributed $10 million from their general assistance programs to support nearly 4,000 asylum seekers and their families over the past 2.5 years, while they're awaiting the adjudication of their claims to give them a work authorization. So we've got problems on both ends of the spectrum, which suggests to me that the entire system is broken. What is the Department